Imagine a predator so agile it could chase you through the dense forests of prehistoric Asia. When we hear Velociraptor, most of us picture that giant monster from Jurassic Park. Nearly 10 feet tall, scaly-skinned, and with an insatiable appetite for human flesh. But what if I told you the truth about this dinosaur is far different from what you've been led to believe? Get ready to uncover how cinema turned a real dinosaur into a Hollywood myth, and in the process, told us more of a fictional tale than a scientific fact. The real Velociraptor, which lived around 75 million years ago during the Late Cretaceous period, was much smaller than its Hollywood counterpart. Measuring just about 6.5 feet in length, including its long, thin tail, and weighing roughly 33 pounds, its physical stature was more like that of a medium-sized dog than a colossal predator. However, despite its compact size, this creature was not to be underestimated. Picture it as a prehistoric Olympic athlete. Its body was lean and perfectly adapted for running fast and maneuvering skillfully through difficult terrain. Its hind legs were packed with powerful muscles, capable of launching it into short, deadly leaps, ideal for ambushing prey. Even though it was small, the Velociraptor was agile and highly efficient, making it an opportunistic predator that targeted smaller, more vulnerable animals like reptiles and primitive mammals. And here's what's even more fascinating. The Velociraptor lived in an environment vastly different from what we typically imagine. It inhabited arid, semi-desert regions where intense heat and scarce resources shaped its survival strategies. Fossils found primarily in Mongolia reveal that it faced harsh conditions in an ecosystem full of challenges, including predators that were equally, if not more, dangerous. Its tail, which many might think was just a common appendage, was actually a critical survival tool. Stiff and filled with hardened tendons, it acted as a rudder, helping the Velociraptor balance while running or making sharp turns to catch its prey. It didn't need to be the massive predator we imagine to be effective. It was a compact package of deadly skills. Now, what if I told you that, despite this fascinating realism, the image we have of the Velociraptor had to be completely reinvented to fit Hollywood standards? A small, agile, feathered dinosaur was intentionally transformed into a scaly-skinned, terrifying monster. How did this shift begin? Well, the answer lies in one detail that was ignored for a long time. Its feathers. Yes, feathers. And believe me, this is just the beginning of how science and cinema clash when it comes to the Velociraptor. Stay tuned. There's so much more to uncover in this video. Now, imagine a Velociraptor covered in feathers. No, I'm not joking. Believe it or not, the real Velociraptor that lived millions of years ago was more like a cross between a robust bird and an agile reptile. The evidence for this plumage came from incredibly well-preserved fossils found in Mongolia, a region rich in Cretaceous dinosaur discoveries. In 2007, a Velociraptor fossil caught the attention of paleontologists because it showed clear signs of feather attachment points on its bones. These tiny bumps on the bones are called quill knobs. They are the same type of bony structure we see in modern birds, where feathers anchor securely. In other words, the Velociraptor had wings, or at least something very close to them. Now, don't go thinking it could soar through the skies like a bird. The Velociraptor's wings were far too short for flight. Instead, they might have served a variety of other purposes: impressing rivals, attracting mates, regulating body temperature, or even stabilizing the dinosaur during fast and precise movements. It's as if it carried the legacy of flying dinosaurs but found other uses for these wings. But then comes the question: why did Hollywood choose to ignore such fascinating details about its existence? Well, the answer is simpler than you might think. Let's be honest. Feathers just aren't that intimidating, right? A feathered Velociraptor, as fascinating as it may be, would never deliver the same visual impact as a scaly-skinned creature with a predatory glare. For a long time, the idea of feathered dinosaurs was completely dismissed, even ridiculed. After all, who would take a monster with feathers seriously? Imagine this: the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex, the king of dinosaurs, being described as a distant relative of a backyard chicken. The agile and fearsome Velociraptor suddenly compared to a peacock with claws. It strips away the mystique of dinosaurs that Hollywood taught us to fear and revere. In the public imagination, dinosaurs must be giant, scaly, and menacing. Anything but feathered and, heaven forbid, related to a chicken. And this prejudice isn't just cultural. It influenced science for many years as well. Early paleontologists often avoided linking dinosaurs to birds because it could make them seem less impressive in the eyes of the public. After all, fossils of massive, fearsome creatures attract far more attention and funding than studies of smaller, feathered dinosaurs. It was only with advances in technology and the discovery of better preserved fossils that the truth began to emerge, along with a new way of seeing dinosaurs. For paleontologists, though, the idea of a feathered velociraptor has always been far more exciting, as it directly connects this dinosaur to the evolution of modern birds. Yes, that's right, the closest relative of the velociraptor you can find today is a bird. Surprising and ironic, isn't it? This is where we start to see how science and cinema took completely different paths in telling the velociraptor's story. While Hollywood needed something fierce and terrifying for their films, science shows us something far more elegant and surprising. A dinosaur that, if alive today, might look more like a grumpy peacock than a ravenous, aggressive monster. If you're finding it fascinating to learn that the real velociraptor was nothing like what Hollywood has shown us so far, just imagine what else we have in store for you in future videos. Subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss any prehistoric curiosities. Let's keep going. It's impossible to talk about velociraptors without mentioning their curved, lethal claws, immortalized in cinema as perfect tools for dismembering anything unfortunate enough to cross their path. Who can forget that iconic scene in Jurassic Park where the velociraptor uses its claw to threaten a victim, like a predator toying with its prey before the attack? It's a powerful image, no doubt. But is it true? Well, as is often the case with dinosaurs, the answer is a bit more complex. The velociraptor did indeed have an impressive claw on each of its feet, curved, sharp, and about 2.5 inches long. This claw was elevated off the ground while it walked or ran, almost like a special weapon kept ready for the right moment. But here's the catch. That claw wasn't used to slice its prey like a horror movie blade. Paleontologists believe the claw served more practical, less cinematic purposes. One of the most widely accepted theories is that it was used to grip or pin down smaller prey, allowing the velociraptor to bite with precision. Picture it leaping onto an unsuspecting victim, driving its claw into the body like a hook to hold it in place while its teeth did the heavy lifting. Another fascinating possibility is that the claw was used for climbing surfaces, like trees or even larger prey. Studies suggest that the claw's curved shape was ideal for grasping and scaling, which would have made the velociraptor even more versatile in challenging environments. So, rather than being a ninja-like prey slicer as depicted in films, the claw was more of a multipurpose survival tool. Here's another blow to Hollywood's fantasy. While movies show velociraptors attacking humans or massive dinosaurs, the reality is that their claws were better suited for smaller prey, such as tiny mammals and reptiles. They likely avoided confrontations with larger animals because, with their compact size, taking such risks would have been dangerous. Does that mean the velociraptor was less terrifying? Maybe. But think about the efficiency of a predator so well adapted to its environment. It didn't need brute strength, it only needed speed, agility, and the right tools to thrive. Speaking of survival, have you ever considered how much intelligence plays a role in it? After all, in the movies, the velociraptor is portrayed as a near-military strategist, capable of opening doors and setting up ambushes. But was it really that smart in real life? Let's find out next. If there's one thing Hollywood loves to exaggerate, it's the intelligence and speed of velociraptors. In the movies, these dinosaurs are portrayed as prehistoric criminal masterminds, capable of planning ambushes, coordinating team attacks, and even opening doors. A skill that would make even a seasoned bank robber jealous. But how close does this come to reality? Let's start with speed. The name Velociraptor literally means swift thief, so it's fair to think it was fast. Studies suggest it could run up to 25 miles per hour, making it comparable to some of today's fastest land animals, like greyhounds. Its anatomy was built for speed. Long, muscular hind legs and a lightweight body, perfect for short chases and quick maneuvers. But forget the idea of it running alongside a Formula One car, as some movies might have you believe. Now, about intelligence. This is where things get even more interesting. The Velociraptor's brain was large for a dinosaur, suggesting it had decent cognitive abilities. It was likely smarter than many other dinosaurs, with skills that helped it hunt, evade larger predators, and navigate its environment effectively. But this intelligence was more instinctive than strategic. Think of something comparable to a modern-day crow or parrot. These birds can solve simple problems, but they're not exactly acing IQ tests anytime soon. The idea that velociraptors were team hunters is another Hollywood exaggeration. There's no concrete evidence they coordinated attacks like a pack of wolves. It's more likely they were opportunistic, solitary hunters, occasionally gathering in small groups only when absolutely necessary. After all, life in the Cretaceous period was more about individual survival than team dynamics. Finally, we have to talk about that iconic scene in Jurassic Park where a velociraptor opens a door. Scientifically, this is almost impossible. While they were agile and had a certain level of intelligence, the coordination and strength needed to manipulate complex objects were far beyond their capabilities. Of course, that doesn't stop it from being one of the most memorable moments in dinosaur movie history. So, the next time someone tells you velociraptors were super intelligent, you can set the record straight. They were smart for dinosaurs. But compared to modern mammals, they were nowhere near the level of intelligence needed for chess-worthy strategies. Speaking of Hollywood exaggerations, let's dive into one of the most drastic transformations these films made. Ready to have your mind blown? The velociraptor you think you know isn't quite the velociraptor that actually existed. That's right, and let's find out why. Now comes the biggest revelation about the velociraptor. The dinosaur you saw in Jurassic Park isn't actually a velociraptor. Yes, you heard that right. What Hollywood calls a velociraptor on screen is really an inflated and stylized version of another dinosaur, the Deinonychus. But why did this happen? Let's rewind and take a closer look at what went on behind the scenes. Back in the 1980s, when Michael Crichton was writing the book that would inspire the movie, he based his Velociraptor on descriptions of the Deinonychus, a larger and more robust dinosaur discovered in the United States. While the real Velociraptor weighed only about 33 pounds, the Deinonychus was nearly 3 times heavier, tipping the scales at around 154 pounds. It was the kind of predator that could truly inspire nightmares, and that's exactly what Crichton wanted. So why didn't they just call it Deinonychus in the movies? Well, that's where marketing magic comes in. Velociraptor just sounds more intimidating and dramatic, doesn't it? The word itself, with its sharp, fast sound, immediately evokes something dangerous and swift. So Crichton and later Spielberg decided to borrow the name Velociraptor and apply it to this larger, scarier dinosaur. But it didn't stop there. Beyond swapping names, the filmmakers also gave their Velociraptor a far more menacing look than anything science had uncovered. They stripped away its feathers, increased its height to nearly 6.5 feet, and made it much more muscular and agile than any real dinosaur. Essentially, they created a monster that never existed, but one that captivated audiences and redefined what people imagine when they hear the word Velociraptor. Interestingly, just before the release of Jurassic Park, fossils of a close relative of the Velociraptor, called the Utahraptor, were discovered. This dinosaur was almost the same size as the Velociraptors in the movie, leading many to believe Spielberg was ahead of his time. But in reality, it was pure coincidence. The movie team had already crafted their fictional Velociraptor, and the Utahraptor ended up being a lucky scientific discovery that added some unexpected credibility to the fantasy. So what can we take away from this? The Velociraptor you saw on screen is a mix of creativity and science, with a heavy dose of exaggeration to make it more exciting. But the truth behind its cousin, the Deinonychus, is even more fascinating, especially because it highlights how science evolves and how entertainment can shape our perception of natural history. Speaking of shaping perceptions, let's dive into one of the most drastic changes the movies made: the size. After all, the real Velociraptor was smaller than the average teenager, while its fictional counterpart, well, let's just say it was big enough to scare anyone. But before we go there, tell me, do you think Hollywood made the right call using the name Velociraptor instead of Deinonychus? Or would the original name have been even scarier? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on this marketing trick from the movies. Let's move on. If there's one thing Hollywood loves to do, it's make everything bigger, and the Velociraptor was no exception. In the movies, these dinosaurs are portrayed as enormous creatures, about the size of leopards, capable of attacking humans with terrifying ferocity. But the reality is quite different, and honestly a bit disappointing for movie fans. As we've mentioned before, the real Velociraptor was about 6.5 feet long, but most of that length came from its long, thin tail. It barely stood 1.5 feet, half a meter, tall at the hips and weighed around 33 pounds, less than many domestic dogs. This means that if you saw a Velociraptor in real life, it would look more like a large turkey than a giant predator. So why did Hollywood decide to make this dinosaur so much bigger? The answer lies in the story. A small Velociraptor just wouldn't have the same visual or emotional impact on the audience. Imagine trying to create a scary scene with a raptor the size of a golden retriever. It might be deadly, sure, but it wouldn't have that "oh my god, it's gonna eat me" factor we see on screen. So, the filmmakers simply gave the Velociraptor a size boost, making it much larger, and, as a result, far more intimidating. But even though it was small, the real Velociraptor wasn't a harmless creature. Its compact size made it agile, stealthy, and efficient at hunting smaller prey. It likely used its environment to its advantage, ambushing its victims rather than taking them head-on. It was the kind of predator that relied on strategy and surprise, not brute strength. And the surprises don't end there. Besides tweaking its size and name, Hollywood also gave the Velociraptor a terrifying roar that no one can forget. But did you know that sound is pure fiction? Let's dive into that next. Who doesn't remember the Velociraptors roaring as they hunted their prey in Jurassic Park? Well, here's the truth. That iconic cinematic sound is pure fiction. In reality, the Velociraptor probably sounded more like a duck or perhaps an irritated peacock. Disappointing? Maybe. Curious? Absolutely. What we know about dinosaur sounds comes primarily from comparative studies of modern reptiles and birds. Since velociraptors are more closely related to birds than to large reptiles like crocodiles, scientists believe they likely made short sounds, such as grunts or hisses, nothing like the roars Hollywood sold us. In fact, their calls probably couldn't even fill a room, let alone echo through the walls of an abandoned lab. The sound of the velociraptors in the movies was, in fact, an ingenious creation by sound designers. They combined noises from dolphins, geese, and even turtles during mating to create something that sounded alien yet vaguely familiar. Yes, you read that right. The terrifying velociraptor roar was partially inspired by turtles. This just proves that cinema has a unique talent for turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. But why did Hollywood choose to ignore what the velociraptor probably sounded like? Let's be honest. A chirp or a hiss just wouldn't be that scary. Imagine a tense scene where a velociraptor appears, and instead of a fierce roar, it lets out a sound similar to a chicken. It would be hilarious, wouldn't it? While science continues to advance and helps us better imagine how these dinosaurs behaved, one thing is certain. The cinematic velociraptor roar is one of the most memorable sounds in pop culture. It may not be accurate, but it perfectly captured the fear and excitement the filmmakers wanted to convey. And speaking of excitement, the way velociraptors hunt in movies also deserves some attention. Hollywood showed us dinosaurs working as a team, like wolves, to ambush their prey. But is that really true? Let's find out next. And hey, if you're enjoying debunking the myths and uncovering the truths about velociraptors, go ahead and hit the like button on this video. It's a simple way to show that you're on the side of science and not just the movies. Let's keep going. If Jurassic Park did one thing exceptionally well, it was turning velociraptors into organized and frighteningly intelligent predators. Who can forget the scene where one character is distracted by a raptor while another ambushes him from the side? It seems like a military-grade strategy, doesn't it? But as always, the truth is quite different. In reality, there is no concrete evidence that velociraptors hunted in packs. Fossils suggest they were solitary hunters or, in rare cases, may have acted in very small groups, but without the coordination we see in the movies. This makes sense when you consider their size and abilities. At roughly 33 pounds, they weren't built to take on large prey as a group, let alone organize such complex attacks. Hollywood created the idea of velociraptors working together to increase the tension and visual impact. A pack of intelligent predators hunting like wolves is undeniably far more terrifying than a single dinosaur chasing its prey. But science tells us that velociraptors were more likely opportunistic hunters. They probably preferred to target smaller or more vulnerable prey, steering clear of larger animals that could pose a serious threat. Here's another fun fact. While the movies portray velociraptors as relentless predators, the truth is they might have also been scavengers, feeding on leftovers or carrion left behind by bigger predators. After all, in nature, survival trumps bravery or strategy. So why aren't paleontologists certain about velociraptor social behavior? Part of it comes down to the lack of complete fossils found in groups. While there is evidence that some dinosaurs similar to velociraptors, like Deinonychus, may have hunted in packs, this doesn't directly apply to the velociraptors we know. Whether they hunted alone or in groups, one thing is clear. The real velociraptor was still an efficient and adaptable predator. And, thanks to Hollywood, it has become one of the most iconic figures in pop culture. Now that we've debunked nearly every myth about the velociraptor, how about we talk about its influence in popular culture? Because, despite all the inaccuracies, it's become one of the most beloved and most feared dinosaurs of all time. Despite all of Hollywood's creative liberties, the Velociraptor has become an undeniable pop culture icon. Since its debut in Jurassic Park, it's been more than just a dinosaur. It's become a symbol of intelligence, agility, and danger. But does it really deserve that reputation? Let's take a closer look. Thanks to the movies, the Velociraptor has come to life beyond the big screen. It's appeared in toys, video games, and even memes. Who hasn't seen the Velociraptor? That meme, showing a velociraptor seemingly pondering deep philosophical questions, proves how this dinosaur has transcended its existence as a Cretaceous predator to become a versatile comedic icon. Moreover, it has inspired countless other works of fiction. In games like Ark, Survival Evolved, and Jurassic World Evolution, velociraptors are indispensable creatures, often customizable and central to gameplay. They also appear in animated series like Camp Cretaceous, where they're portrayed as both fierce and somewhat humanized. This adaptability as characters shows how they can be both terrifying monsters and, at times, almost sympathetic figures. But behind all this glamour is the fact that the Velociraptor audiences know is far more a creation of entertainment than of science. The real Velociraptor was small, feathered, and, let's be honest, probably far less impressive than the movies made us believe. Yet, it's precisely this blend of science and fiction that makes it so fascinating. It's a perfect example of how cinema can take something incredible in its own right and turn it into something even more spectacular. And now it's time to reflect. While you may have imagined the Velociraptor as the terror of the Cretaceous, science reveals an animal that was smaller, feathered, and much more reserved. Does it feel like we've been deceived? Maybe, but isn't that part of Hollywood's magic? They took a fascinating dinosaur in its natural form and transformed it into a creature that captured both our imaginations and our fears. So, the next time you watch a movie with velociraptors, remember, they're not the ruthless monsters Hollywood sold us. Deep down, they're more like feathered relatives of modern birds, maybe closer to a grumpy goose than a deadly predator. But hey, who can blame Hollywood for wanting a little extra drama, right? Don't forget to check if you're already subscribed to the channel, leave a comment about what you thought of the real story behind the Velociraptor, and hit that like button to help our channel grow. See you in the next video. Until then,